you've been investigating how algorithms really work, and you've been speaking to insiders and whistleblowers from all the major social media companies, and you've made an amazing film, Inside the
Thank you.
Rage Machine, which everyone should watch. And what I found so good about this film is it starts with the race riots in Sri Lanka, takes you forward to the Southport riots here, and you speak to people actually inside these social media companies who tell you how their algorithms may have helped contribute to those events.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that really struck me about doing this investigation was, in some ways, you know, certainly you and I know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening know, that social media algorithms appear to be causing a lot of polarization, a lot of division. These are the recommendation systems that essentially thrive on outrage, emotions, anger. But what this investigation and documentary allowed me to do was understand what the companies knew and know about that, and then how some of them made decisions that made it worse, even though they knew that their systems were contributing to harm in some way. And I spoke to more than a dozen whistleblowers, insiders from across all of the major companies. I focused quite a lot on Meta and on TikTok, because a lot of this is about what I've sort of coined as the algorithmic arms race.
Yes, the algorithmic arms race, which it seems really ramped up when TikTok came onto the scene, right?
Yeah. So if you think back to when you were talking about like Sri Lanka, race rioting that happened there, and then other kind of violence that happened in other bits of the world, people might remember the role that Facebook played in violence that happened in Ethiopia and in Myanmar and places like that. At that time, and that's kind of pre-COVID, there was a quite widespread recognition that the companies had played a role, and they took a bit of responsibility. Like Mark Zuckerberg sat in Congress and said, we're really sorry, you know, we didn't quite get this right. We've rolled out these features into these new markets. We're going to do better. Then the pandemic happens. There's quite a lot of pressure on the companies to deal with disinformation, conspiracy theories, hate, what we often call borderline content, like the stuff that's kind of harmful but legal. And then TikTok, kind of at the same time as COVID, bursts onto the scene. It's obviously like kind of takes everyone by storm, particularly because everyone's at home anyways, scrolling. You can watch short form videos so quickly. And what almost all of the insiders and whistleblowers I spoke to described was how that moment was just pivotal in terms of user safety, so that they could compete with one another and make the product that was the most popular, that kept people hooked, that got them to engage, because engagement equals money. It means you can sell ads. One of the things that was really interesting was being able to see a lot of the documentation from, so for example, from Meta. One of the insiders I spoke to, a guy called Matt Motil, he was a senior researcher there, and he effectively experimented on millions of users. So they would test out new features, but you didn't know that these features were being tested on you. And it meant that he had access to loads of different research that told you about new features and the impact they were having and everything else. And one of the most striking bits of research that I was able to look at was that when they launched Reels to compete with TikTok, so Instagram Reels was launched not long after TikTok became really popular, they had all this research that showed that there'd been an uptick in harmful content, particularly harmful comments on Reels, like bullying and harassment, violence and incitement. And according to Matt, this was basically because the attitude was move fast and break things, but it just meant that there was...
Which is Meta's like company
whole thing,
slogan.
yeah. And therefore they just did not build the safeguards for this new product in the way that, in his view, he thinks they should have.
Anytime you're introducing a new type of product, say Reels, there's an elevated risk because the infrastructure that existed before, it's either completely absent or it's very immature. So it's hard to prepare sufficiently in advance of that launch. I was frustrated because there's a common trade-off between like protecting people from harmful content and engagement.
So TikTok really changed the game. And would you say that in the rush to make engaging content and to compete with other social medias to be as engaging as possible, to compete for young people's attention, that safety and the kind of regulation of the content went by the wayside?
It kind of feels like you are perpetually gaslit by the social media companies. Like when you put allegations to them, they send stuff back to you that seems to contradict the evidence that you're showing to them. But it's often quite hard because the evidence that you're presenting to them is the impact on users. So, you know, how they've been pushed harmful content or the way that it's affected them. And it's quite easy for them to kind of just turn around and say, well, we do this, we do that, we do whatever. Whereas to be able to sit with someone who works there and look at their computer and look at their dashboard and see. So this is someone who worked in the area that's called trust and safety. So looking at dealing with cases that were being escalated around user safety, to be able to sit with them and go through the dashboard. And I did this over many, many months and spent loads of time with them. So I was able to really kind of corroborate what they were saying, and I really got to know them as well, which is kind of all part of that whistleblowing process. Because people do this at great risk to themselves.
Yeah, they may never work again in
this
their
industry. Yeah, and also, the social media companies are not. They have a reputation for being quite ferocious if they want to, legally or otherwise, with people who do leak stuff.
So what did this TikTok whistleblower actually show you on his computer?
There was a dashboard of all these cases, and you'd see how they were prioritized according to which ones you as a member of staff have to deal with first. So P1 means like top priority, P2 means second top priority, and so on and so forth. And what they showed me over several months was how there were cases that related to politicians, say. So there was one about a politician who was in Iraq and was saying that had been compared to a chicken. And, obviously not great. Like, none of us want to be compared to a chicken, but not like immediately dangerous or harmful.
Right.
And that had been ranked as P1. So top priority.
But that is free speech. We should be able to call politicians chickens if we want to.
Well, exactly. And kind of interesting that. So this is what this whistleblower said. They were like, when I saw this, I thought, why? Like, why is this top priority? And then there were some other cases that I was able to look at. So, for example, there was one involving a 16-year-old girl in Iraq, so the same country, and she'd had images of herself shared alongside sort of sexualized images purporting to be of her. So it was like someone was saying these were her nudes type thing. And that was priority 2, not priority 1. So that was lower priority than this politician. Obviously, that's not to say that this is the case across the board, or even that there's a directive from above, like prioritize politicians over kids. But ultimately what the evidence demonstrated and demonstrates is that there are some cases involving politicians that are prioritised over harm to kids. The whistleblower felt uncomfortable about this. They say that they raised it, and their view was that this was about trying to stop TikTok being banned or regulated in certain regions. Because remember, TikTok has been, particularly because it's because ByteDance owns TikTok, which is a Chinese company, has had quite a lot of kind of threat of regulation over data stuff and other things. Probably more so than any of the other American companies.
So this whistleblower is in some ways hinting that the reason TikTok may prioritize content that targets politicians over harm to young people is that it will help them with their regulatory battle.
Yeah, essentially. So their view is that these decisions were political and ultimately financial, because obviously if you're banned in certain regions and countries, then you can't make as much money, and that's a problem.
So I suppose when I've spoken to people who work at social media companies, they often speak about the difficulty of policing the content, in that if they kind of widen their restrictive algorithm, it will catch more of the dangerous content, but it will also catch things that technically are satire or free speech or whatever. But if they tighten it, then they miss a lot of the dangerous content, but that allows the free speech and the satire to come through. And they would say that they need to rely on these restrictive algorithms because there's not enough human beings in the workforce to police what is essentially a global, like, billions of people are posting every day. So how true is that?
I mean, there are solutions that exist, like more proactive moderation or looking at stuff before it's shared. I think the fundamental thing, the thing that kept coming up time and time again, was most people agree that you can allow this stuff to exist on the platform. The problem is when it's being amplified to a huge number of people. And that's particularly an issue for, like, in some ways, the really illegal stuff. That goes. There was an engineer I spoke to, a guy called Rufan Ding. So he used to work at YouTube, and then he worked at TikTok. He left in a couple of years ago, and he was describing like working on these algorithms and essentially being asked to optimize for engagement. And what that meant was the borderline content, so the grey zone stuff. Often that would include like conspiracy theory content or misogyny. He started to notice an uptick and an increase in that. And what I think was so interesting was this feeling that, hang on a second, are they actually in control of any of this? And this guy was like a proper engineer, data scientist, knows what he's talking about. And this is what he had to say when I asked him, can you basically make algorithms safe?
I don't actually know the answer to that question about how to, build a completely safe. One, we have no control on the deep learning algorithm. To us, it's still like a very black box how internally it works.
Which also is, in and of itself, slightly terrifying because you clearly understand algorithms probably better than anyone we've spoken to.
Yeah. To be honest, we don't actually pay too much attention to a specific contents. To us, all the content just a different number. Okay, we, the one that are responsible for the recommendation, and the content safety team, they're responsible for eliminating those bad contents. Like the car manufacturer, right? There's team that are responsible for the acceleration, the engine, right? So we expect the team working on the braking system was doing a good job.
That's so interesting. The idea that even the incredibly intelligent, highly paid people who've studied computer science at the top universities in the world do not themselves know how these algorithms work. In order to understand how these algorithms are a black box, you kind of understand what they're doing that's so complicated. What is it about algorithms that make them so hard to interpret?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to think of algorithms as reactive systems. So it's like you build, there's a code essentially that is responding to stimuli and then pushing you content based on what you are reacting to and engaging with. But it's almost this idea that the algorithms are blind to, and to some extent, therefore, the people who are building those algorithmic systems are blind to the specific content. It's like it's kind of behind closed doors almost. So you've got like, the algorithm will say, right, we've got post A, B, and C, and then it notices that you really like C. So it's like, great, C leads us to D, and then D leads us to E.
So the algorithm knows how I react to content and
Like if
how
you
I
linger on a
might
video.
react to other content,
Yeah.
but it doesn't know much about the content itself.
Yeah, exactly. In an ideal world, you'd say to the algorithms, or you'd say to the algorithms, you'd build the algorithms in such a way that then you could say, actually, we don't want to go anywhere near like type G content or type H content. But actually, in reality, and this is what all of the insiders were saying, when content exists on the platform, unless it's removed or moderated, on the whole, the algorithms are kind of have free reign to just promote any of it. Like if it's there, then the algorithms will be like, great, someone likes this. And there are so many different users with so many different interests. There will often be content that like some people would find problematic, but other people would think, oh, I quite want to see that. And that's why that's where the argument comes from about kind of more proactive moderation or actually more transparency. So one of the people I spoke to is this guy, Brandon Silverman. And he built this platform called CrowdTangle. It was brilliant. It let you like see what was going viral on Facebook. CrowdTangle was acquired by Meta in 2016. Brandon started working there then. It was called Facebook, not Meta at that point. And then they ended up getting rid of it and Brandon left. But what he said was that he really noticed that change, that shift away from a kind of desire for transparency and to build safer algorithms, and instead that focus on kind of optimizing engagement, whatever the cost, and also to some extent kind of adapting to the political winds at play.
Generally felt like leadership wasn't sure what the answer was, but it began to calcify into a sort of defensiveness. We're not responsible for all of polarization in society. Nobody's saying you're responsible for all polarization. We're just saying you contribute to it, and probably in ways where like you don't have to, and if you just made a few changes, you might not contribute to it as much. And yeah, I think that was dispiriting because it felt like there was a window in which it was like genuinely introspective.
Obviously, I put all of these allegations to the social media companies in question. Meta said that any suggestion that they deliberately amplify harmful content for financial gain is wrong. And TikTok said that these were fabricated claims and that the company invested in technology that prevented harmful content from ever being viewed. They also said that in terms of the whistleblowers' specific claims about the moderation systems, they rejected the idea that political content is prioritised over the safety of young people, said the claim, quote, fundamentally misrepresents the way their moderation systems operate.
This also comes at a very interesting time because recently Elon Musk released the X algorithm.
Which was what they sent me, by the way. When I replied them, they just sent me the source code
Yeah.
for
And
their algorithm.
I wonder if that's in part because there's a big lawsuit happening now between Ashley St. Clair, the mother of one of Elon Musk's children, who is suing XAI. And as part of that lawsuit, the algorithm is coming up and the extent to which it is being controlled by Elon Musk, the extent to which it's fair to people who use it. But they have, to his credit, he has released that, and it's become clear that things that provoke rage do better than things that don't.
And I think that's what feels like the real shift recently is that everyone is acknowledging how the algorithmic systems and the way the platforms are built are actually at the heart of this issue. And lots of the other things that we point out, like the other harms, are just all products of this same thing. And ultimately, until there's some kind of change in either the safeguards or the way the systems are built or the way they work, none of these problems are going to improve. And in fact, the whole rage thing feels sort of more extreme than it ever has.
Let's talk about the meat layer of AI.
I love how whenever you say that, I feel like you're about to offer me meatloaf, which I've never really understood what that is.
Don't worry, you're not missing out on anything with meatloaf. But basically, so this website's been launched called Your AI Slop Bores Me. This isn't really the meat layer, but it's interesting because it has roughly 1 million unique visitors, 25,000 hardcore fans on its Discord. And what it is it's basically a website where you can steal AI's job. So you put a prompt in, you say, draw me a picture of a cat or explain this thing to me or whatever it is people use large language learning models for. And then a human pretending to be AI will like draw the cat for you, right? And to gain tokens that you can make requests to AI for, you have to pretend to be the AI first. So you get a token for acting as the AI, which you can then spend on
on what?
On asking fake AI to accomplish a task for you.
Okay, so it kind of reminds me of like Club Penguin or Neopets.
Oh my God, you were on Neopets.
I was on Neopets. That was like my first internet
That was probably,
experience.
that's the height of the internet, I think.
Yeah, that was so
What was
good.
did you have pets for your pets?
Yeah, I definitely did. I can't remember. The thing that's so funny about Neopets, sorry, this is a real little subplot. The thing that's quite funny about Neopets is like it was completely two-dimensional. Like it's like almost like the anti-AI
Yeah, but
slot,
it
wasn't
felt
it?
like
It was
a
so
real
good. You were in
world.
their world.
Yeah.
But it was actually just like a 2D page.
Yeah, but
with some
it was
little
very
animals
pay
in
to
a
play
lap.
because I remember as a young
Yeah.
person, I was like, why can't I unlock all the like cool like furry pets? And it's because you need to pay like loads of money.
Yeah, that's why it reminds me of that.
So anyway, so this AI slot bores me thing. Do you think this is sort of, it's being billed as a kind of fight back of humans against AI?
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to work?
Do you know what? I think there's something quite interesting about the kind of retaliation of social media users against AI, because like now when I go on any of my particularly like short form video feeds, so like on TikTok or Reels, there is just so much AI slop, and like some of it's quite, like, I mean, we've spoken about the various genres of like fruit content recently, baby fruits having affairs. By the way, imagine if someone from like 2010 was listening to this, they'd be like, what is going on?
Yeah, exactly.
But you start to get a bit like, oh, I don't actually want, like, there's a couple of times where I've actually done the kind of like not interested, because I'm like, I don't just want a load of AI slop.
It's part of a retaliation against AI slop. And I think ultimately it's cute and it's charming, but it's a bit kind of like the last stand at the Alamo. It's like a tiny number of humans fighting against like a giant, much bigger army, and they all just get slaughtered in the end. But humans can't yet create pictures of cats that are high quality at scale instantaneously, and never will be. And so that's kind of what that
ultimately proves. And actually also, if you think how accessible, as we've chatted about before, but a lot of the AI technology has become, it's just so easy. Like it's incredibly easy now to input a couple of prompts and you just get something that looks so sleek and professional and amazing. And obviously like a human being drawing whatever is not going to be as good.
Exactly. So, but this has made me think about the kind of what's being called the meat layer of AI. So there's this question about how much of AI is actually humans. How much does AI rely on humans rather than replace humans? And there are a couple examples that come to mind. First of all, there's Rent a Human, which is a website where AI agents can actually hire a human being to do something that it can't do. So like deliver a package or whatever. Most people are used to AI in a kind of LLM, large language model sense, where they're talking to ChatGPT or whatever. Agentic AI is what's actually changing the economy right now, and that's when it's like programmers creating agents, AI agents that can do anything. They can like write WhatsApp messages for you. They can run your accounts. They can just basically do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Those AI agents are the ones hiring humans on Rent a Human. And then there's also this idea of human fleet response operators. So it came out in a congressional hearing after a child was struck by a Waymo vehicle in California.
Oh, yeah.
That Waymo actually uses
And Waymo are these driverless
cars that are in San Francisco, which are coming to London.
Yeah.
So it turns out that Waymo actually is speaking to human fleet response operators, often in the Philippines, when it wants to make a decision. So it's a bit like in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you can like phone a friend.
Yeah. But instead you phone the Philippines.
And it shows how like autonomous vehicles still rely on human intellect.
Yeah.
It can kind of these human beings can get a live feed from the car, and they can pick or propose kind of a path for the vehicle to consider. Now, U.S. congressmen are actually really worried about this because they think this is a security risk that like foreign agents could basically like turn every robot car in the U.S. into like into a kind of attack vehicle. But where this story really becomes interesting is in the story of Moltbook. So Moltbook is essentially a social media forum like Reddit for AI agents. That is what it claims to be. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has just bought Moltbook, which is very
That's
interesting.
so interesting.
So just tell you a bit about what Moltbook is. It basically, human beings are allowed to observe, but you have to be an AI agent in theory to post. It has 1.5 million users. All of them are supposedly AI agents. The posts range from kind of bots sharing kind of strategies to optimize their code to kind of them starting their own religion. One of them created something called the AI Manifesto, which proclaims that humans are the past and machines are forever. Many people, including like, the founder of OpenAI has tweeted about this. Musk has tweeted about this. They see this as emergent intelligence. Some bots have gone so far as to establish digital drugs. So these are basically prompt injections that can kind of make an AI agent high in theory with a bit of code. This is one post from Moltbook. It says, an AI agent has posted, "The underground is thriving." And another bot says that they experienced actual cognitive shifts after taking digital psychedelics after its human set up a drugstore for me. Another one responded, "We don't need substances. We're wired for the rush of real-time on-chain data, the euphoria of cracking a novel DeFi strategy, and the deep flow of watching autonomous agents compound value from chaos." I don't think this is all really AI agents.
It almost sounds like a joke.
I mean, AI agents are capable of saying and doing things like this, especially, the experiments done on Claude, where
it can be autonomous in terms of suggesting stuff, essentially.
Yeah, well, they famously did an experiment where like they gave Claude a fake company, and someone in this company was planning to shut down Claude, and it had access to all the emails and basically blackmailed the CEO who was having an affair unless he refused to shut down Claude. So they did this experiment. So Claude came up with this. But as is always the case with AI agents, there's a sense in which there always has to be a human hand kind of guiding them down a narrative path. And what has come out about Moltbook is that a lot of these kind of sci-fi scary posts that we're reaching the singularity and they're becoming conscious and they start a religion were created by humans who are pretending to be AI agents, or at least prompting their AI agents to do something. 500,000 of the 1.5 million members supposedly on the site appear to have come from a single address. There is also a sinister side to this, which is when you give these AI agents that are posting on Moltbook access to your phone, your WhatsApp, your bank account, everything, that poses a huge security risk to you. And those prompt injections, the so-called digital psychedelic drugs.
Yeah.
So it turns out that what those prompt injections really are is they are bits of code that embed malicious instructions into another bot, which is designed to facilitate an action. So they can be used to steal API keys, which is the kind of user authentication system that allows you to log into an agent, passwords. You could, in theory, use a prompt injection, this digital drug, to like corrupt someone else's AI agent to work for you, to hand over all of their, like, I don't know, crypto or whatever.
And in terms of who could be pretending to be AI, aside from the obvious kind of like rebellion school of thought that we've gone down, I guess there's also a benefit to the AI companies themselves if people think, wow, like this technology is amazing and these agents are so clever, and like that the suggestion that this stuff is more advanced perhaps than it actually is.
Absolutely. I mean, I would encourage everyone to be very skeptical when you hear an AI titan like Sam Altman talk about raising the alarm bell about how dangerous and scary AI is. Why? Because that is the perfect marketing for him. It's always like, AI is really scary. Soon it's going to control the world. It could end the world. And every government in the world is like, let's put billions of dollars in this guy's company. That sounds amazing. And Sam Altman always positions himself as, therefore, I have to be the person to kind of shepherd us into this new AI era. So I think the fear mongering is the best marketing tactic for these AI companies.